Hi people, how are you all? I am honestly kind of brilliant, and if you clicked on this video you can probably guess why, because Our Flag Means Death finally got renewed for a second season. At last. Took them long enough. I completely get that these things take time and effort to organise, and they have all sorts of fancy meetings, have to check availability, and they were probably waiting for Pride Month to make the announcement and all that nonsense. But I am just so glad they finally got round to it, because I have honestly had this video ready to go up for weeks now. So here we go, let's talk about Season 2 and all of its massive potential. And yeah, I am probably jumping the gun a little bit and would be able to give much better guesses if I waited a couple months for like interviews and for them to have actually written the damn thing and, you know, the kind of behind the scenes photos, that sort of thing, to give hints. But I'm excited, okay? So I wanted to do this now. I'm gonna hopefully split this video into two very distinct categories: predictions of things I'm fairly certain will happen, or at least probable to happen, and things that I'm hoping for or think would be really cool but have no idea whether or not they'll actually occur. Also, kind of pointless disclaimer at this point, but this video is going to contain spoilers for Season 1 of Our Flag Means Death. Shocker. So here's some of my predictions for Season 2. Bearing in mind that these are by no means certain or the only way the show could go, they just seem like the most obvious options to me. First and foremost, Lucius. Not dead. Not even slightly. I would bet a heck of a lot of money on it if I actually had any money to bet. I can't say I know how or when, but I am just certain he's coming back. This show is a comedy. Even if it does dip into more serious themes and moments in places, Lucius actually being dead would be so tonally jarring. It's also important to look at why Lucius was killed off in Season 1 from a purely plot-based perspective. Because it wasn't to further or complete his own story arc, or even to motivate or hurt the characters around him. No one else even knows he's dead yet. Lucius getting thrown overboard wasn't even really written in a way that was meant to make us feel sad because nobody knew about it. It was meant to show us how far Ed had fallen and how far he was willing to go. Whether or not Lucius was actually killed didn't matter, it only mattered that Ed tried to kill him and wanted to kill him. Which means here, all the usual downsides of the resurrection trope don't apply. I think it's also important to note that whilst it does make sense from a purely objective moral standpoint, and it was his decision, so theoretically we should treat him the same, Ed is just fundamentally more forgivable if Lucius is still alive. Sure, he meant to kill him either way, but I struggle to see how the show could redeem him well enough if Lucius was actually truly dead. Because if he's alive, we get all of this juicy character interaction from Ed having to eventually confront the man he tried to kill and apologise to him and make amends in order for everybody to move on. I also kind of have massive hopes for Lucius to be living in the walls and haunting Ed somewhere. There's like a whole load of different directions they could go with Lucius' survival, and hiding in the walls of the revenge is probably not very high up on the list, but it would be so fun. Like, hilarious fun. So my second prediction is a lot easier to justify, because it's more piracy on a pirate show, I know. Completely out of the box there. More specifically though, I reckon that episode 1, wherever they decide they want to take the story after that, is most likely going to involve Steed and his crew trying to steal a ship. I mean, I suppose that the magical powers of the Gaydar have helped everybody else navigate in just a dinghy up till this point, but with the whole crew together, I kind of suspect an upgrade is needed, although I would be really interested to see them all try to pile into the dinghy together. And I also think it'd be a really good opportunity to show how far they've come with their piracy skills, as well as to allow for some good-hearted hijinks to balance out what are likely to be some real rough conversations when Steed discovers the consequences of his actions. Prediction number 3. Steed and Ed will probably reunite, if only temporarily, before the midpoint of the season. David Jenkins has said in interviews before that Steed and Ed's relationship in all its forms is kind of the centre of the show. It's the story that they're telling. And one of the reasons why he doesn't plan on making more than possibly 3 seasons total is because there's only so far you can take that one relationship. But it's also important to note that without Steed and Ed directly interacting in some way, even if it's through a third party, I suppose, their relationship can't really evolve. Their actions and decisions have to be able to affect one another. They have to be able to respond to the decisions each other makes to create that change between them. And because they've both done things that were wrong and hurt the other person, it isn't a case of one character needing to perform some kind of sacrificial act in order to redeem themselves. They have to spend time together and rebuild that trust over a number of episodes for it to ever work or go anywhere. I also think it would just be really hard to keep this show a comedy if they both spend literally all of season 2 hating themselves and each other. But then again, these people are geniuses, so there is probably a way, and it will probably still be kind of brilliant. That said, prediction number 4, the one thing that can impact their relationships or their paths cross again is Ed finding out that Steed, quote-unquote, died. And also, I suppose, Steed finding out that Ed marooned his crew, but that one's kind of a given, and they basically explain that he works that out at the end of season 1, even if it isn't the very last scene. I'm pretty sure that Ed is going to find out about Steed's fake death, without realising the fake part, before they reunite. Firstly, because, otherwise you don't really get to use the fact that Steed faked his death, at all, if he already knows that Steed lived. And also because, Ed gets all his information from Izzy, and you just know that that short, tiny little demon man would love to gloat over Steed's tragic death and make Ed feel really terrible about it. I was just thinking it put Ed in a really interesting mental space because he'll have to accept that Steed is truly gone and confront the fact that he still obviously cares about him, maybe even make him question whether Steed meant to abandon him or whether it was just another accident, because Steed seems to walk into accidents like I walk into doors. Seriously. And most importantly, it's probably one of the only things that is going to stop Ed from killing Steed on sight. That momentary confusion of, I could have sworn you were dead, is probably going to be what saves his butt. So, yeah. 5 is another sort of obvious and pretty vague one, I think, and that is that there will probably be a new external antagonist of some kind. With both the Badmintons dead, the only real antagonist Steed is facing are Ed and Izzy, and Izzy's really more of a antagonist to Ed, who is an antagonist to Steed, rather than a direct antagonist to Steed. And I suppose possibly his own crew could become antagonists if things get a bit dicey, what with the whole you're trying to fall in love with the man who abandoned us, but who knows. But something else will need to drive at least certain parts of the plot to kind of keep the story turning over and potentially set up for season 3. Whether that new antagonist is some new pirates, or possibly the British Navy again, who, come after them all and start causing problems, I have no idea. But someone or something needs to act as an outside force to push Steed and Ed and the rest of them into situations where they have to start to trust each other and work together somehow to take on some kind of common enemy. Because otherwise, they really could just wallow in their misery and ignore each other for a whole season, which would be kind of counterproductive. And finally, for this half of the video, I am pretty sure we're going to be seeing a lot more significant contributions to the plot from both Frenchie and Black Pete compared to what either of them got in season 1. Frenchie is, of course, still aboard the Revenge with Jim, but he is also, interestingly, one of the only people left on board that ship with no romantic stakes in the situation. Jim will likely be trying to kill Ed for stranding and potentially murdering Oluwande. Izzy will be doing what he does best and mentally traumatizing Ed because he's in love with him and can't seem to admit that to himself, and Ed is just such a hot mess. Even Fang obviously fancied Lucius quite a lot and will probably not be particularly impressed or happy when he realises that poor Lucius is quote-unquote dead. Whereas Frenchie is much more level-headed. I am not saying that friendships are less valuable in any way than romantic relationships, but Frenchie hasn't been shown to have a particular strong connection with one specific member of the group yet, except for possibly Wee John, but they've not really gone into that as much. And so I feel like he's likely to be much calmer than everybody else aboard that hot mess of a ship. If it's not on fire by the end of the season, I will be very impressed. And I think it's a really good opportunity for Frenchie to come in as kind of a mediator character. Even if he is terrified of Ed, he's going to be the one who has to do the heavy lifting to stop them all killing each other before the first few episodes are out. As for Pete, he is the person who was closest with Lucius, and therefore probably the person who's going to react the worst when he finds out what happened to him. He's also notably the biggest admirer of Ed, and I mean, I can only imagine what it's like to meet your hero, have your hero turn out to be really quite a cool and awesome and a lovely person, and then he stabs you in the back and murders your boyfriend. Like, that is not a good way to go. And Pete is known for making brash and impulsive decisions and commonly resorting to violence. I can't quite work out what the plan for him is, but I suspect he's definitely going to get more of a spotlight because of his very specific relationships to Lucius and Ed. He might even try a mutiny on Steed, to be honest, when he realises that Steed doesn't mean to avenge Lucius. It could all get very interesting, and I think he's going to be a really important part of that, which is cool. So that's everything that I think will happen. But there are several things that I think could happen that I would like to see if possible, but I don't really have any explanations or evidence to back up any of these suggestions. These are just personal things that I think would be really awesome. First, and probably the most likely of these following suggestions, more of Izzy Hands. I don't want them to redeem him necessarily, in fact I would prefer it if they didn't. I imagine it would be really difficult to do that anyway, and almost impossible to manage until Ed and Steed are back on the same page and cooperating and working together to maybe try bring Izzy round. But I would love to know more about him and why he is the way he is. Not to justify his actions, but to add some layers. I mean, loads of people have theories about his one glove, the funky ring he's got on his tie. There are so many little details about this character that we don't know, and I'd really love to know what exactly it was that twisted him into this, frankly, terrible human being he has become. It could be so interesting, and I would love to see more of it. He's basically the main antagonist, so I'm presuming we will get more, but just especially I would like to see more of him. I'd also love to see more of Mary Bonnet. She is a legend. Beautifully written, and so fiercely independent and strong-willed in her own way, yet really human. She is a strong, independent female character whose strength doesn't come from feats of actual strength, and who doesn't have to be all, I only care about business and I don't want a family or love or human connection. Like, you know, she loves her children, she really cares about Doug. She tried to make things work with Steed because she knew it was the right thing to do. And yet she's still so strong and powerful and just really cool as a character. I'd especially love to see her interact with Ed, actually. She's one of the only characters other than Lucius who has any level of emotional intelligence. I just think her having to process the my ex-husband is in love with Blackbeard thing, as well as just looking at the absolute mess Ed has become, could be really interesting. Her and Ed have quite a lot to bond over in terms of being abandoned by Steed. It's probably not going to happen, given all of the main characters are out at sea. Mary hates the sea. She has everything she wants. She has no reason to leave her home. But if they could find a way to write it in and make it natural, it would be so cool to see more of her, and specifically more of her interacting with characters like Ed, maybe the crew of the Revenge. I've read a lot of fanfic about it. It's probably not going to happen, but it would be very cool. Speaking of women, we need some lesbian pirates. I can count the number of female characters in the show on one hand, I think. I might be missing someone, but it's basically Mary, Spanish Jackie, Undertaker Lady, and Jim's Nan. So there's not tons of them, but I would love to see more. The ones we've got are really well written. I mean, you know, Assassin Nun, like, how is that a character archetype? That's so cool. But we need more women. Not only are lesbian pirates objectively very cool, but I would love to see a female pirate captain replace Ed as Black Pete's idol. I'd love to see her come in and be really awesome and powerful, and Pete decide to idolize her rather than Ed, now that he clearly has no trust for Ed. And just, like, particularly with Pete's disdain of women, I think there's some really cool character development for him. And also just, if I wasn't in a kind of fighting dragons with a bow and arrow fantasy novel, I would want to be a pirate. There are not many female pirates in most shows. you know, I was a big fan of Elizabeth Swann as a kid. I want to do some swashbuckling and see some awesome women out on the ocean. Please. Then there's Steed. There's been a lot of internet talk and fan art about rugged Steed and bearded Steed, and whilst I'm very on board with bearded Steed, and I like the idea of rugged Steed and this very cool aesthetic, and in the last couple of shots of Season 1, Rhys Darby looks awesome, I would also really like to see the slow but steady return of Fancy Steed. One of the really interesting parts of Steed's character is that in running away from his home and everything he had in his life before, we get to see a really clear separation of the things that he did because he wanted to, and the things he did because it was expected of him. And his fancy clothes are clearly something he wore because he liked them, rather than because he felt he had to. Not only is Steed autistic coded in a number of places, and there's a real implication that he does like the way the fabric feels, we also see a number of instances in Season 1 where he dresses specifically up for certain situations. Like the treasure hunt, or when they go to the Republic of Pirates, the way he wears his clothes is a big part of who he is and his self-identity. Something that I can kind of relate to. Some days if I put on the right outfit, I just feel better about myself and life. And I really love the idea that when he gets back to piracy, he starts slowly stealing little bits of wardrobe from different ships he's raided. Possibly even bits that don't match. I think it'd be really cool to see him in all mismatching fancy clothes that don't actually coordinate, but give him that sense of being put together and feeling nice and comfortable. I also really love the idea that when he finds out that Ed has lost his silk handkerchief, instead of miraculously finding it in the ocean, which a couple people have suggested, and it would be cool but probably not very believable, I really like the idea of Steed going out specifically and raiding a ship or a merchant of some kind and finding a new one for Ed. Probably in a different colour. I'm thinking purple or maybe like the tealy colour that Steed wears all the time. But finding one to give to Ed, not to replace it, because the silk handkerchief is kind of a representation of Ed's heart, but to offer up as a start and an opening to making amends to him, and a moment when Ed sees a bit of the Steed that he used to know in there. I just think it could be so cute. I would also really like to see Steed have a mental breakdown. Like a crying in the bathtub kind of mental breakdown. Not because I enjoy people's pain, but because I think it'd be really cool from a character perspective. I think most likely after Ed has allowed him back onto the ship, but before he really trusts him again, there's going to be a period somewhere in there of kind of mutual distrust but tolerating of each other. I think there could be something in there that just causes Steed to snap. Because Steed is working so hard on trying to do the right thing all the time, trying to make amends to the people he's hurt, always in motion, that he doesn't ever seem to stop. And at some point he's going to realise that his family didn't need him. They never needed him. And the only person who did need him no longer wants him, or is at least acting that way. That by letting Chauncey's words get to him, he really did end up ruining Ed by leaving him, and in pursuing his life at sea, Steed has accidentally deconstructed his entire existence down to the point where he quite literally doesn't exist, not even on paper. He's dead. And I think he could really do with some time to process that and start finding his self-worth somewhere that it doesn't come from being a father or being a husband or even being someone who supports Ed, but by being his own person and realising that who he is okay on its own, even if he doesn't have anybody else. I also just think it'd be really good for Ed to realise that Steed isn't perfect and that he has flaws and insecurities too, and that maybe he didn't abandon Ed because of Ed, that it isn't about him, that maybe Steed has his own things going on, and he's a broken, messed up kind of person too, and needs all the help he can get. And realising that they're both very human, and just the processing of all of that could get really cool. I would also personally love for Steed and Ed to be back together again by the end of the season. I don't know if we'll quite manage that because they have talked about a third season, but I would just love if season 3 was the two of them being adorable and domestic and having this really cute relationship while probably fighting off some third party, maybe planning to fake their own deaths and run away together again. But just, I would love to see, if we get season 3, a period of time where they're just happy together, because you so rarely get to see in TV relationships that are happy and functioning. It's always about getting together. I would love to see them together and see them being adorable together, and for that to happen, obviously, they need to be back on pretty good terms by the end of this season. And also, I think it would just be nice for everyone who has, you know, been so desperate to see this show renewed, because it is amazing. It's got some beautiful relationships in it, just to kind of get that payoff of seeing them actually being happy, you know? Finally, I would love to see more of Roach. Why? Simple. Because Samashute is a brilliant human being who has interacted so much with the fandom. I mean, the 40 orange glaze cake, I've not had a chance to make it, I'm not really a baker, but very cool. I mean, I get that Ngl I and Vico Oritz and a couple of others have also been really interactive, but particularly Samashute. I mean, his Instagram account is just like my go-to resource for reference images for all the different characters and bits of the ship, and he's just a very good person, and I'd like to see more of Roach, because Roach is awesome, kind of terrifying, but in a really cool way. In fact, I'd love to see more of all of the members of the crew of the Revenge. My favourites list is basically Steve at the top, literally everybody else, and then Calico Jack and the Badmintons at the bottom, and they're all dead. So I want to see more of everybody. You know, make this like 20 episodes long. It's not gonna happen, but, you know, give me all the content. I will happily spend several episodes just going into the randomest little stories about, you know, them trying to steal a pig or whatever. Just let's make it crazy. I want to see more of all these amazing characters, because they're so fun. It's such a good ensemble cast. So yeah, I think this is one of the longest scripted videos I've ever written. The only videos I have that are longer than this are the unscripted sketchbook tours I've done, which, I mean, I have a tendency to ramble, so those go completely off topic. This has only gone slightly off topic in places, but it's one of the longest scripts I've ever written. Honestly, this show deserves it. It's brilliant. I'm definitely obsessed, because I don't think I've made this many videos for one show ever, as I have in the last couple weeks. There are, of course, plenty of other things that I think might happen or would love to see that I have just forgotten to mention here. I want to see more of all the characters, all the storylines, and I am very, very certain that whatever the writers do with the story, even if it's nothing like my suggestions, is going to be fabulous. In fact, it's probably better if it's nothing like my suggestions, because I'm trying to write my own story at the minute, and it's a slow progress, because I can't get plot beats to work properly. It's going to be fabulous, whatever they do. I absolutely trust these people and these writers to get it right, which is rare, because there are very few shows where I trust them to get things I love and the representation I love right. But what do you guys all think? Do you have any predictions of your own? What kind of new characters do you think we might get? What are you looking forward to most in season 2, whenever that finally comes out? It's going to be like a year from now. I'm getting so hyped for no reason. As always though, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you did, and definitely leave a comment. One of my favourite things about my last proper talking Flag Means Death video I made was all the comments I got on all the discussions we had. So please leave comments. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all soon. Bye! I gotta go obsess over this show some more as I wait for the next season, so yeah.